Hello, RoahmMythril here once again, getting back to Ramble 3, and it's talkie bit time. It's time to go over the judge commentary for the last two stages we played. So first up we have 168th place, Cycle Facility by Sharker to Shark. 26.6 out of 100. This stage got 5.6 in design, 5.8 in fun, 2.8 in creativity, 5.2 in aesthetics, 7.2 in functionality. Mick, 17 out of 100. Oi, for once I have absolutely no idea what to say about this. To be blunt, it's really boring. It's a bunch of enemies in really simple locations, with the odd gimmick here and there that makes things slightly more than basic. It has some unusual enemy choices, such as Shield Guard and Dakon Limited, but for the most part, this is really just there. Well, there's one aspect to complain about. What even was the purpose behind that second element? This really isn't a level that warrants a second visit, and having to do so again just to find a random, basically unmarked ladder was vexing. That's the only part of the stage that's truly memorable, though. Shinryu, 13 out of 100. Oh, it's the character from Dead Cells. It looks like an image that had trouble loading in. Well, that was certainly something. In all honesty, there's not much to talk about here, at least when it comes to enemy placement and level layout, barring one particular moment. It's a rather short stage with basic enemy configurations, doing a mostly linear path. There are a couple of notable parts along the way, however, such as the first token. While I appreciate that an intentional death isn't required just to get it, it also begs the question as to why there's just a random patch of invisible floor over a spike pit. This isn't the only spot with terrain problems, however. There's two spots before the boss doors where you can stand on thin air, along with the midway checkpoint respawning you inside the floor. Oh dear. And then there's the second token and energy element. For those of you that don't like spoilers and want to try to find them on your own, feel free to look away from the next block of text in this review. I guarantee, however, that you're not going to find them unless 1, you already know where they are, or 2, you have the map and or radar upgrades unlocked. About that, Shinryu, I did find it. And I also found problems with it. Just why? Why exactly are these hidden in such an obscure way? There's absolutely no indication that there's a ladder beneath the metal poton. Unless maybe, and this is really stretching it, the ladder is supposed to be lined up with the tube that comes out of said mini-boss. I'm just taking a wild guess here. Even if that were the case, however, it would still be an incredibly obtuse hint. Patchy, 35 out of 100. Le Facility Cycle Facility Site. Whole aesthetics keep switching around per room. Is that the cycle part of this ye old facility? This level is a whole mishmash of random gimmicks, enemies, and misaligned collisions, feeling like the stage is just kinda thrown out there without much care or thought put into it. If you need even more evidence of how unpolished this stage is, the respawn point is embedded into the ground. Truly the level of all time. Okay, I didn't experience that one. Now how about we top this all off with a funny secret ladder into the last token and element, along with a funny memery imagery. Next. Flashman85, 33 out of 100. Level names are very important to me. They help set player expectations and may hint at the amount of care and effort expended by the designer. In fact, 2 whole points of my design score are devoted to how well the name matches the level. Cycle implies wheeled vehicles, or perhaps something cyclical such as seasons. Facility suggests a location with a specific function. I originally pegged this level as a place of inscrutable purpose that cycles through unrelated tile sets and enemies, recycling the same uninspired configurations ad nauseum. But as soon as I wrote that sentence, it occurred to me that maybe this is a recycling facility. Ramble 3 contestants, we need to have a talk about naming recycling-themed levels. So let's assume there's actually a theme here. I see junkyard tiles, vaguely industrial tiles, which don't match at all, junk-spewing enemies, and enemies that dispense discarded balls and metals. Yeah, it's a recycling facility. I don't know how bubbles and a goo golem figure into it, or why we detour for a single screen into some other level involving lasers. I'll leave those questions to the philosophers. The numerous design flaws are textbook examples of what happens when someone still learning how to use the dev kit doesn't get other people to playtest their level. Some highlights include egregious problems with collision, section, and checkpoint objects, a completely skippable mini-boss that creates a deadly problem if completely skipped, and an unsightly secret room with delusions of being an acceptable place to stash half the level's key collectibles. Still, the level is playable and not overly long or difficult. The music is good, background graphics when they decide to show up add some character. Part of me wonders whether this was submitted merely to see how the judges would react, but I'm hopeful this was an honest attempt gone awry. and A Spark, 35 out of 100. This feels like several levels thrown into a blender and an incredibly unfocused level appeared from it. There was nothing but enemy challenges, as each gimmick only appeared once and were rarely appropriate or added anything, such as the quick man beams or water spouts. The constantly changing tileset was jarring, even if this was the point of the level. There needs to be some cohesion through a level, but we rarely ever saw the same enemy more than once, and certainly didn't find the level any more difficult as it went on. In order for a constantly changing environment like this to work, there needs to be something that stays the same throughout to anchor the player. Without it, the entire stage feels like a mess. Did there need to be a second exit? A token would have been enough. Yeah, honestly, this stage did kind of have a bit of a lack of direction, and I do feel like the main thing that stood out to me was there were some Mega Man 5 for Game Boy enemies that just kind of surprised me that they were there. And yeah, the hidden area, I did find it fair and square, but I'm not sure if there was really a tell for it, and I'm not quite sure why I died the first time. Unless it was because I hadn't defeated the Met Dispenser. It was just weird. So next up, 167th, the level equivalent of an old man rambling at you by Zunzet. 27 out of 36. This one got 7 for design, 5.4 for fun, 3.8 for creativity, 4.2 for aesthetics, 8.4 for functionality. Mick, 19 out of 100. I don't remember any old man rambles coming with ominous theme music, same with the songs for ice cream parlors and the jungle. I also don't remember any actual difference between orange and blue doors, as both of them lead to level progress considering there's multiple energy elements. Kinda sideswiped the concept there. Most of what I do remember is a poorly built level. Machine Gun Joe jumps off screen a lot. Their planet needed them. And Walking Bomb isn't nearly as prominent as the completely skippable Ramble suggests. There's plenty of bees, however. Entirely too many bees. What even was that nonsense, anyway? Top it off with a dull attempt at a joke boss, and Hornet Man struggling to function in duplicate. And we've got a level I rather didn't enjoy. There are two pieces that deserve credit, at least. The fact that damage spikes versus kill spikes are actually explained and telegraphed, and the token challenges are mildly interesting. Doesn't make up for the rest of the level, but they warrant recognition nonetheless. Shinryu, 19 out of 100. What? No, seriously, what was that? I can't even really talk about this because there's almost nothing here worth bringing up that isn't immediately obvious from just looking at the level itself. The double Hornet Man fight is the only thing I can really think of that warrants any kind of mention, mostly because of how frustrating it is unless you abuse Tornado Blow. Work for me. Other than that, I'm not even sure what else to say here. Even that context at the end doesn't help explain this level much. If anything, it only raises more questions. Yeah. Patchy, 41 out of 100. Angry Grandpa. Well, that was a stage, I guess. The old man joke boss was pretty funny, but the rest of the level, it's just there. A very bare-bones level with nothing really much standing out in terms of design. Even the Joe at the beginning just jumps off screen if you wait long enough. He doesn't want to get involved here. He wants out! A joke boss fight alone is not going to be enough to get the level a high score, pal. The tiling could use some work, too. Never mind the fact Napalm Man's tile set is kind of overused. Wait, why are there hidden paths inside the walls now? Were there? If so, I missed them, and apparently they didn't lead to anything truly important, I guess. When it's not about the old man, the other half of the level devolves into Bee's funny, right, guys? The Bee jokes have gone so out of control that there are now 2 Hornet Men. That's not a good prize. Needless to say, the fight is pretty unreasonable and unfun. Flashman 85, 37 out of 100. Back in my day, we made levels that made sense. Context? We gave players context right away, or left hints everywhere. Anyone who hid their context in a secret room or at the end of their level was fed to the sharks. You better believe we had sharks, big sharks, all over the place, in sock drawers, everywhere, just like the power-ups here. Kids these days think E-tanks grow on trees. They don't. Only little health refills do. Which reminds me, if you're going to use flower and spike tiles, make sure they match the background. You can't decorate a bunch of collision objects and call it a level. A level should have a deliberate sense of style, with tidy architecture and a sensible layout and polished text. Before I was a freelance garlic salesman, I was a llama photographer, so I know a thing or two about aesthetics. And you can't throw music tracks around all willy-nilly and call it a soundtrack. It's hard to stay in character. When I was your age, we only had 1 Hornet Man, and that was already more than some of us could handle. Back then, we had to walk 20 screens uphill to the only boss chamber in the whole level, and there was no secret passages dropping us off who knows where. We almost never heard from Dr. Light unless we were stuck on an asteroid hurtling toward the sun, and that was mostly for flavor. We learned everything the hard way, through good level design. Did I ever tell you about the time I found bees in my tadpole eggs, or the time someone left caltrops on the stairs? Those are pretty good stories. Well, I need to rest my eyes for a bit. Be a dear and get me some ice cream, would you? I don't mind if it's nutty, but it has to be layered right so it doesn't look like it's entirely nuts. I felt that was necessary. I mean, you gave me back in my day as a beginning, I had to. Ace Spark, 28 out of 100. So most time in the stage is spent reading signs. They say comedy is subjective, but the stage amounts to bees, expect a chuckle. People will just skip your pages of funny dialogue. Not a word. What's this? A judge doesn't find a comedy about bees to make a good level? My chest cavity full of bees ought to put a stop to that. No, it won't. Adding more bees doesn't suddenly make it funny. Oh, I agree. Bees are not funny. So that's why I've brought hornets. Fair point. Fair point. But bees is funnier to say than hornets. It is fun to just yell, bees. It's not fun to deal with a bunch of bees, though. Two entirely different scenarios, that. So yeah, this one for me, I feel like was a joke that didn't quite land. It was alright, but yeah, the double Hornet Man boss, it was a bit of a thing. If I had noticed Ice Wall was doing more damage earlier, that would have helped quite a bit. I probably wouldn't have died as many times. But it is also a very awkward weapon to hit with. I just didn't think to drop it in the middle and let them run into it. Knowing that, it makes the fight a bit easier, but yeah, it is still a thing. But with that, that's where we're going to call it for now. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I shall see you again next time. Until then, I'm an old man! Sadly, I'll still be an old man afterwards, too.